Welcome to the Superabound podcast, where vision-led entrepreneurs learn to build a generous business without sacrificing what matters most. You are listening to episode 321, Ending Overwhelm as a Business Owner.
This is a topic that we coach on a lot. It seems that when people start up a business, they just like to take on everything, right? You kind of say, hey, let's take on the world. And the very first thing that tends to happen with that is overwhelm. So we're excited to dive into how to actually deal with it in a way that it becomes maybe not your best friend, but certainly an important part of your skills as a business owner.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when we're talking about ending overwhelm, this is relevant really to anyone that ever feels overwhelmed. But we are, of course, going to speak to this for the business owners, the founders, the leaders, the people who probably got to a place of being very successful by taking on a lot. So overwhelm may be a feeling that most of them are very used to. And we want to teach you a little bit more about how to work with overwhelm as an energy. It's not just about ending it, and that doesn't mean deleting it from your life, because if you are in charge of a lot and you have a lot of responsibility, you are going to feel overwhelmed from time to time. But this is less about deleting it completely as it is about ending your reaction to it in a way that hurts you, hurts your business, leaves you feeling depleted.
Which I think that's kind of at the heart of the Superabound approach and what we've seen really deliver the best results, not just for our clients, but for the businesses that they lead. Because what we're talking about here is not, surgically removing something unpleasant, but actually getting to know yourself as a leader at a deeper level. And I love what you said, Aaron, taking some of those things that at first glance you'd say, nope, I want it deleted, and actually working with that energy to not only be more effective, but also to be more empathetic, to be more human, to be the kind of leader that people want to be around because you get them because you're real. You're not just pushing through and asking everybody else to do the same. You become wiser through the process.
Yeah, and maybe the very first thing I will say about this is we often will think about overwhelm like it's a mindset problem. So a lot of business coaches, a lot of coaches out there will treat overwhelm like it's a pesky, annoying feeling. It's a product of not thinking correctly, whatever that means. And I've watched clients over the years really treat it in the same way. So the very first thing I want to say is that if you are successful, if you do have a lot of responsibility, overwhelm is not just something in your imagination. It's not just a feeling that you can cure by thinking better thoughts. It really is usually the product of having more things on your calendar than you do time or energy to do them. So I want to get away from treating overwhelm like it's a thought problem only, because really it's a relationship dynamic that you are having with the list of responsibilities and tasks that are before you, which is why, which probably annoys many of my clients, but we do it anyway. The very first kind of step to addressing chronic overwhelm, which is what most of us have experienced, is starting by really listening to the wisdom that is hidden, the hidden gems within that feeling that comes up.
And we start here because this is where the magic is at. It's easy to just say, okay, we're going to look at our calendar and we're going to be ruthless. We're going to cut this and we're going to cut that and we're going to focus on the things that matter. And that's how a lot of people go about this if they aren't in the mindset camp who just say, it's your fault, think better thoughts. Mm-hmm. You want to start somewhere in the middle. You want to start with your own experience of that feeling And this can be really difficult because it's an unpleasant one. Most of us want to get the heck out of there. We do that by distracting ourselves with something non work related. It could look like procrastination. It could look like diving into a giant task list, crushing your to dos and feeling accomplished because you did so much. But rarely do we take the time to pause and say, what's here for me to learn? We treat ourselves like, a bad robot. You're like, you're feeling the wrong things. Get busy. Do something else to feel differently. But this first step treats you like a human being who makes sense. This is the essence of self-warmth, because when you say, I make sense, this feeling is here for a reason, then you are treating yourself with kindness, like you would treat a good friend, a child, somebody that you loved. You start by showing that same consideration to yourself. And that alone can start to ease some of the freneticism around that feeling. It may not make it go away, but you're adding love and warmth to a situation that usually kind of lacks some of those things.
This is the very first step in a process that we teach in our book, Superabound, Live the Life the Universe is Dreaming for You, called Heal Static. Healing static, the very first step is honoring that, hey, yeah, my calendar is really packed. Hey, yeah, there's a lot of things I'm responsible for. It makes sense that I would be feeling this particular feeling right now. And we won't go through that whole process today on this show, but if you have not read the book, if you have not also taken our course, Light Your Next Lantern, which is the essential book companion course, I highly recommend you give yourself that gift right now, because we do guide you through the process of healing static. And this is something I think all of us can use multiple times a day. When you get good at this, you'll be able to do it in 5 minutes. You'll be able to warmly take care of yourself. You'll be able to see when the overwhelm's coming up, honor it, experience it, find its wisdom, listen to what it wants you to know, and really be able to move on with your day without being lost and stuck in static. I think it's like the best couple $100 you could ever spend, because this is really going to support you through one of the most chronic problems we as business owners and leaders have. And we do that in a number of ways. We do it as a meditation, we do it as a journaling process. So that's a really helpful course if you haven't done that already. We'll make sure that the link for that is in the show notes. And once you've really found the wisdom in that feeling, sorry to tell you, but step 2 is not dive into that to-do list and start working frantically with like some more awareness. That actually is what most people do. And it overlooks something really important, and it often makes the overwhelm worse, because now you're aware of why it's happening and you feel trapped because there's nothing you can do about it in this immediate moment. So the second step that we recommend, after you've kind of seen the wisdom and you've heard the static, you've gotten some information from within about why this is coming up for you right now, the next step is to really, and this doesn't have to happen in order, this is something that should be ongoing, but it is to work on strengthening your inner flame.
And practically what that means is addressing the things that light you up. So that's going to be your visionary practice, the activities you do that move you closer to your vision. Oftentimes the feeling of overwhelm comes from being scattered in a bunch of directions that don't necessarily make sense. So knowing where you're going and why it matters will allow you to maybe say no to some of the things that shouldn't be on your calendar right now. So you're increasing that flame that you have from focusing on your vision and taking concrete steps towards it as one of the parts to this process.
And I mean, that's talking about it from like a really high level view, but also on a practical level. we have sustaining rituals. It's part of our superabound tending triad. And those are really the things that you're doing for your own well being. Like, consider this for yourself. If you are rested, if you're nourished, if you're feeling happy and fulfilled in your life, when you look at your calendar and you see a day that has a lot on it, but it all looks doable, it all looks like, yeah, I have the energy to do this. I have the time to do this. I have a life that will support this output. Chances are you're probably not going to feel overwhelmed. When we feel overwhelmed, it's often because we're tired. We've said yes to too many things. We've taken on responsibilities that aren't deeply connected to that bigger vision. And that is another, like, that's why we have to look for the wisdom in that overwhelm, is to let us know when maybe we are stretching ourselves in ways that aren't fundamentally important to the big picture.
If you think about the life of an athlete, they're going to center all of their activities around their performance, their ability to arrive at game day at the highest level. And nobody questions it. You're like, of course you have a massage. Of course you're spending time with your food and your sleep and your recovery and your stretching. That all makes sense. But as an entrepreneur, all of those things, if they aren't thrown out the door immediately, they are certainly questioned, right? You're taking time during the day for a nap, for a massage. How dare you put yourself at the top of the list? Missing the fact that you are literally the heart of the business. If you put yourself on the line, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, saying, hey, none of these things matter, you're missing the fact that you matter first and foremost, and that you also really matter to the business. So putting yourself at the heart of that equation changes everything with that.
And in order for those, and a lot of times people will say, okay, that sounds great, but I don't have the time. I'm overwhelmed. I have chronic overwhelm. Absolutely cannot do a nap and a workout and a massage and a sauna. Or people will go onto my Instagram and they'll tell me these things. They'll be like, must be nice, not realizing that there's one more piece to this tending triad that is probably the most challenging. Yes, but it is the piece that stops you from leaking energy. And that is what we call the personal filter. That is sort of taking a good hard look at what you are doing in your day that's actually aligned with the big vision, that's actually supportive to you, your well-being, your energy, and the life that you're trying to create. Protecting those things and saying no to everything else. And I said this at the beginning, successful people usually are successful because they said yes to opportunities. They did things that maybe other people wouldn't be willing to do. They did stretch themselves. Often, founders and leaders have capacity beyond that of a mere mortal. But we forget we are mere mortals. We are, we still need these recovery activities. And sometimes the first and hardest thing is learning to say no to things that are not aligned with either your vision or your well-being. And so the personal filter is a really, really big deal. It's when we're talking about overwhelm, it's probably the thing that is the key for most people. Learning to say no to things that are not essential. And it's really hard, which is why we coach on it. And we do talk about this in depth in our book. We do talk about this in depth in our course. So if you know that saying no is hard for you, if you know that you like to keep your opportunities wide open, I highly recommend you read that book, you get that course, and we could also take it deeper with you in some private coaching settings, because to me, this is what makes or breaks people.
The final section is taking action. Now that you have gained the wisdom from your emotion, you have spent some time supporting yourself and saying no to the things that don't belong and saying yes to the things that will support you, you actually take on the tasks and decisions that make up the territory between where you are and that lantern that you want to light, that goal with soul that aligns with your vision. And for that, we have the 5R framework. I'll go through it really quickly here, and then we'll dive into each individually. It is resolve, so it's make decisions, respond, do the work related to each decision, reflect, learn from what you just did, rest so that you can be ready for the next time, and repeat. The 5 R's are meant to be done over and over and over until you light that next lantern.
You said, Steve, like taking action is the first thing, but actually, when we talk about the 5R method, we know what we're talking about, but I just want to make this really clear for everybody. The first step is actually making decisions. It is resolving. Too many people will dive right into the work. They'll say, okay, it's the task, it's the thing, but not everybody steps back and looks at, do I have to be the one to do this? Is this something that could be delegated? Is this something, if you're a leader or a business owner, is this something that actually moves the needle on the next goal or lantern that I want to light? Again, feeling overwhelmed, to me, this maybe is not true for any of you, but for me, overwhelm is often the alarm bell that I'm working on things and I'm giving them all kind of the same priority level in my mind. And then I'm freaking out because I can't do 10,000 things at once, even though I would love to, because I'm a high capacity person. But if you really look at what's in front of you, resolving would be saying, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed because I don't have the time and energy to do everything I had planned on my calendar today. So the first step would be looking at that calendar and saying, what is essential? What is vision aligned? I need to decide where I'm going to put my time and energy, the time and energy I have today, which is not infinite. Where am I going to put that? Once you know that, then you can get to work. Then you can start to do whatever you've decided to do or delegate whatever you've decided to delegate. But it has to come from, ideally, a thoughtful decision about how this will be. And I'm just going to throw this in there because I had this conversation with a client recently. Think about like your energy throughout the day. I think sometimes we consider that like a little bit too out there, but we do have cycles throughout the day, throughout the month, throughout the year, throughout the seasons. Are you a person that does their best creative work in the morning? If so, how can you structure your life to make sure that you capitalize on that? If you're a person that needs a nap after lunch, how can you make sure that you're not doing anything that's too heavy at that time? How can you maybe just give yourself that sustaining ritual as a daily block on your calendar? It's a kindness, and it's another way, to your point earlier, Steve, that you treat yourself not like a bad robot, but like a human who has energy dips and bursts.
And it sets the tone for your team. Not only are you being kinder to yourself, you're also showing your team that it's okay for them to be kind to themselves. When I was at HubSpot, there were dedicated nap rooms full with hammocks and pictures of tropical scenery as the wallpaper. And you could book it and know that you were taking a company sanctioned nap. The CEO talked about how naps would just reset his brain and make him ready for the second half of the day. And so that was his way of saying, not only do I do this for my own well-being, but I want all of you to do whatever you need. If naps is your thing, here's the room. If something else is your thing, there was a gym there as well. If workouts are your thing, go to the gym. All of these ways to support people and say, you matter, not only because you matter to the company, but also because as a human, you matter. It's a way to create a more human business, which really is kind of the ultimate antidote to overwhelm.
After you've done your task or you've delegated your task, this is another thing people often overlook, and I consider it essential, is reflecting on how it went. Did you get the outcome you wanted? Did you give yourself enough time to complete what you had wanted to complete? Did something come up that you weren't anticipating? Did you try to do too much or too little? Like, ask yourself some questions and really give yourself a chance to reflect on how this went and learn from your experience. Again, people will sometimes just fly through their to-do list and they won't take a second to really check in and see how it went and learn from that experience so that they can make it better next time. You already talked about rest, but that would be kind of the next phase of that. Reflection can sometimes be within rest, but having a period of acknowledging you did the thing. I know we sometimes don't like to celebrate too soon as leaders, as business owners. People can get really stingy with themselves about having those small milestones, but it's really bad for morale to work and work and work and never take a break and never acknowledge your progress. If not, even if you don't think you need that, if you work with a team, you definitely need a rest and reflection sort of cycle built into that.
And so then once you have recharged your battery, you set the pins up to knock them down again. You make sure that when you're done with the work cycle, you are able to do it again in a repeatable way. This is the essence of sustainable productivity that not only prevents overwhelm, but also prevents burnout, because overwhelm over time becomes inability to function. It becomes low-level burnout, sometimes even high-level burnout, where you really need to take a step back.
I will say as well, for those of us who are creating a business, and I'll say creating or generating a business, there's just so much unknown. There's so much we are making up. And the thing I love about the 5R method is that it gives you a repeatable framework to tackle things. Instead of just working into the void, not knowing what any day is going to look like, this gives you a really clear formula that is very adaptable to almost anything you're going to do, where you can follow it over and over and over again and at least feel like you have crossed some terrain, especially in those days or those months where it feels like you have been working really hard but you don't have anything tangible to show for it. This is what you have to show for it. So I always recommend that people follow the 5R method, especially when you're doing something new, especially when you're doing something you've never done before. And that we go into deep detail in the book about what exactly that looks like with some real world examples from our own clients. But it's another way of reducing big unknowns down to tangible, small activities, step by step by step.
Exactly. So as part of step 1 of the 5 R's with resolve, one of the questions you can ask yourself, and this is very powerful for ending overwhelm, is can this be a smaller step? Oftentimes when people are overwhelmed, it's because there's such a large chasm between where they are and where they want to go. They're like, I can't jump 1,000 yards straight out into the abyss. Like, no, you can't, but you can jump 1 yard. So where's the landing point 1 yard from here? And so asking yourself, how do we make this smaller? How do we make this more human and more manageable can be part of your leadership strategy to end overwhelm.
And here's one little bonus. So this is a little strategic tip, because I think something else that contributes to overwhelm is not only do we have all these things going on in our businesses, but chances are, as a human, you have a lot of loose ends in your personal life. You have things in your business or in your work or in your professional life that they're never emergencies. They never make it to the top of the priority list. So I've been experimenting with this. I would suggest, if you want to try this, start with like once a quarter or once a month if you want to get a little ambitious. One full day, one full work day, or one full weekend day if you're going to do this for your personal life. Clear the decks and give yourself what I'm going to call a loose ends day. This is a day where your only tasks and to-dos are the things that never make it up into emergency status. You might not even have a list of these things if you prefer to avoid like I do. But on this day, I'll share like what I was doing the other day. Basically, it's all the things that when I walk into a room and I see it and I'm like, oh, I need to take care of that, washing that item. I need to repair, we have a new shower head. We haven't installed it. It's the day I need to say, no, I'm not going to do that. Steve, can you install this shower head for me? I keep looking at it, but I never do anything about it. And in your work life, it might be the day where you have to book appointments and they're never an emergency. Take a day where whenever those come into your mind, you deal with them. You deal with them in the moment. They don't get pushed away. If they are longer tasks that are going to take longer than a day, you book a day for them. But you give these tiny tasks that add up to become low-grade overwhelm in your mind and have you feeling like there's a million other things to do on top of your emergency to-do list. You give those things a place and you take care of them. And for those of us who do thrive on feeling accomplished, I totally admit I am one of those people, those days feel great. You like took care of some stuff. It's like weeding the garden. You got all the stuff out and you're starting with a clear, spacious energy for the next day.
Gardening is very satisfying. It's a great metaphor. So I hope this helps you have a sense of all the levers that are actually in your control to end overwhelm. One of the core drivers of this experience is the belief that you can't change it, that you have no control over it. And so hopefully this gives you some ideas, some entry points to changing that belief and then also making some big changes in your life. You are the captain of your life. And so if you find yourself not believing that to be true, take a moment and sit with that feeling. Be warm and be spacious with yourself so that you can arrive at this place where you feel empowered, like you have agency, like you can make the difference that you want to make.
Thank you so much. And we hope this helps. If you have not read the book, if you have not taken the Light Your Next Lantern course, highly recommend you give yourself that gift, because we will walk you through every single one of these tools in detail in a really fun way that will not overwhelm you. And we'll make sure that these Superabound tools are not just ideas that sound good that you'll put into practice someday, but are actually useful and impactful in your life starting now. So have a great week.